Ancient human civilization was far older and far more advanced than we were ever taught in school. In fact, we were a global civilization that spanned multiple continents around the world. And in this video, I'm going to show you key evidence ranging from South America, the Mid-East, Southeast Asia, and when you connect it all, it far exceeds the realm of just a coincidence. Now real quick, let me get the big question out of the way that most people have when they hear this information for the first time, which is, okay, if we were so advanced, what happened to us? Or where's the evidence like metal buildings? Well, you must first take into consideration that there was a massive global cataclysm that happened 13,000 years ago, and a second event 1,400 years later. It's very likely that an asteroid hit the North American ice shelf, which caused a massive 400-foot rise in sea level around the world, a 15-degree Fahrenheit temperature swing, and a massive extinction level event of many mammals. I actually have 2 videos on this which I highly recommend you check them out because the evidence is genuinely conclusive that these events happened. And as far as metal buildings, we must take into consideration just how long of a period of time 13,000 years ago is. I mean, we hear figures like, okay, the dinosaurs apparently went extinct 66 million years ago. So when we hear figures like 13,000 years ago, most of us think, okay, well that's not that long ago. But take, for example, the Titanic, which in just a couple days will have been at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean for 105 years. Nearly 50,000 tons of steel and iron is just disintegrated. And in just a few hundred more years, it will be as if it never existed in the first place. Take even cars as an example. If you leave them outside for just a few decades, they rust straight through and completely just get immersed into the earth, and within a few hundred years, they're non-existent as well. Or even houses. If you don't restore a house within a few decades, the roof will cave in, the walls will cave in, and the same thing happens to it as well. So just imagine what could happen over a period of 1,000 years, or 5,000 years. Or even 10 or 13,000 years ago. Quite literally, the only thing that survives that long period of time is stone. Now let's dive right into the evidence. There are 2 lines that connect several ancient civilizations and megalithic structures ranging from Easter Island to Machu Picchu in Peru, which is right by the Nazca lines, as well as Cusco and Sacsayhuaman, which is so mysterious in how these walls were built and how these megalithic stones were constructed. And when you connect the line from Easter Island, which is so mysterious, to Peru, all the way across the Atlantic to Mali, Africa, which is the location of the Dogon people, if I pronounce that correctly, which for some reason in ancient times they were aware of star Sirius B, which is invisible to the naked eye, and it's not something that was apparently discovered for thousands of years later, yet somehow they have legends and tales of it. And this also coincides with the Sumerians, allegedly the birthplace of civilization in Mesopotamia, that they somehow were aware of the planets within our own solar system. They knew that the Earth was bigger than Mars, and that Jupiter was bigger than Saturn, and Saturn bigger than Uranus, and so on. And yet these planets were not supposed to have been discovered for thousands of years later, but they somehow knew about it and etched it in stone and on clay tablets that were discovered thousands of years later. It's a total mystery. Now when you connect the line straight through the pyramids of Giza and the Sphinx, all the way through to Jordan, where Petra is located, the underground city of Petra, which is so mysterious in of itself. It could hold more than 20,000 people. No one knows who built it or when. And even just a year ago, they found an entirely new entrance with incredible architecture more than 160 feet high. And when you connect a line through Petra, it goes over to the Persepolis in Iran, which is mysterious in of itself, and there's many theories on who built it and when. However, when you consider other ancient civilizations and megalithic structures, we find an entirely other new line that goes from Mesopotamia in where is apparently the birthplace of Muhammad and was just a key site in the Sumerian culture. And if you connect that line over to Pakistan, to the ancient civilization of Mohenjo-Daro, and when you continue that line over to Southeast Asia, running through ancient sites in Burma, all the way over to Cambodia, which is the famous site of Angkor Wat, which is very mysterious. It's a site of much speculation and debate. But ultimately, there are 2 lines that intersect. And these lines, I mean, really, is it just a coincidence that all of these megalithic sites just happen to be completely connected along 2 lines? Is it possible that it's not a coincidence? Well, when you tie in other key pieces of evidence ranging from South America to Egypt to Southeast Asia, you see that, oh my goodness, there are incredible similarities between architecture, stone structures, whether it's the similarities of pyramids, or even the use of obelisks, or the use of trapezoidal doors, which I've never seen before, but they just so happen to be located and found in ancient Egypt, as well as the Incan culture in Peru. Or even take the example of gold funeral masks that were utilized by the Incans and the Egyptians as well. And it doesn't stop there. Just when you consider how they were able to cut and carve these massive stones and place them, and yet they share similarities across multiple continents around the world, you have to start asking questions. They even have similarities between the depiction of the third eye, as well as animals that's located at the center of foreheads. And like I said, when you consider the similarities between architecture and stone structures and buildings across multiple continents, when you look at these similarities, you have to ask yourself, were they built by the same people? Now this leads me to one major point, which is DNA evidence. How is it that they're able to find Middle Eastern DNA found in Native Americans of North America? Or even Aboriginal DNA from Australia found in mummies in South America? This is completely unexplainable and a total mystery to scientists, and these articles you can find are a year old, and they are actively still researching this topic altogether, but they all agree that it's mysterious, and to be honest, it completely debunks the known narrative of the human migration process across the world. And the evidence goes much further than that. In fact, they're finding Egyptian mummies with traces of cocaine, which is a complete mystery considering that cocaine, the cocoa plant, originates in South America. Yet Egyptians had this thousands of years ago somehow, when those plants originate nowhere near that region of the world. So how is that possible? I mean, after all, when you consider these incredible lines that connect megalithic structures and ancient civilizations that are so mysterious and of themselves, when you consider the incredible similarities between cultures, stone structures, and stone buildings, and DNA evidence, and when you combine all of this information together, it's abundantly clear that there was a global civilization that existed, and we were wiped out back to the Stone Age approximately 13,000 years ago and 11,600 years ago when these two massive cataclysms happened here on Earth, which we know of. And yet the mainstream scientists and archaeologists and historians, no one wants to touch on the subject of the cataclysm. And again, watch the two videos that I put out, and there's other topics and people to discuss this as well. I highly recommend you check out the works of Graham Hancock, who outlines this in detail on grahamhancock.com. And he was covering this from as far back as 2001. It's incredible, and he goes into much further detail of how these megalithic sites connect around the world in incredible patterns that, to be honest, are far more impressive than what I discussed here today. And be sure to check out his podcast with Joe Rogan and Randall Carlson, where they discuss all the overwhelming evidence of the cataclysm. Also check out the works of Brian Forrester, who has a YouTube channel, as well as a website, hiddenincatours.com. And by the way, real quick, I don't know any of these people, but their works are so incredible. And the mainstream scientists are trying to keep these guys out of the picture. It's insane, even though they have evidence that's overwhelming. So check out these individuals yourself, come to your own conclusions, but when you start connecting the dots on how they're able to cut and carve stones that even modern-day stonemasons completely disagree with, and when you look at how, well, okay, the primitive methods that have been suggested by archaeologists and Egyptologists don't compute because of the tens of millions of stone blocks, statues, and structures found just in Egypt alone could not have been done with those primitive methods anywhere within the realm of time. In fact, they'd still be working on them today. So something doesn't add up. We were absolutely far older, and we're far more advanced than the textbooks are currently teaching everyone in school. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. Like and subscribe, leave me a comment, and share your thoughts. And I have many other videos on a whole wide variety of topics. Take care, everybody.